We're looking at college football from a big picture ahead of the season. So going into it, what's one big question or storyline that you're following?
Yeah, to me, it's the trajectory of Alabama's program in the second season under Kalen DeBoer. I mean, look, obviously he came into a really tough position having to replace a legend in Nick Saban, but missed the playoff last year, a 9-4 finish, their worst record since Saban's first season in 2007. We know this is a fan base with very little appetite for patience. If he doesn't get things back on track and make the playoff this year, I think you're going to see pressure start to mount there really quickly.
I'm very curious post-house settlement how many schools are going to be quick to fire coaches and what the buyout market's going to look like. Now that you have to share revenue, now that boosters are paying players more, is there going to be an appetite to fire a coach who's, mid? Are we going to see Alabama move on from Kalen just because he's having a 7 or 8 win season instead of the double digits we're used to? Are we going to see someone like Lincoln Riley get more time at USC because they don't want to go out and have to pay for a new coach? Are we going to see someone like Brent Venables, who is a huge buyout but has kind of underachieved at Oklahoma, stick around a little bit longer even though they might want to make a move? All that's going to factor into what the coaching carousel looks like, not just this year, but for the years to come.
One thing I am looking forward to is Lee Corso's curtain call on College Game Day. The Texas-Ohio State Week 1 game will be his last show on the broadcast, and he's had a legendary broadcasting career, and he was surely one of the main reasons so many fans tuned in over the years. So it'll be a sad moment, but it'll also be a nice tribute to someone who's been a staple in the college football world. The college football playoff format is looking a little bit different this year. What change to it do you think will have the biggest impact on the 2025 season?
Well, for this year, the only major change is in the seeding. You saw last year was the original concept of the 12-team playoff, which is that the top 4 ranked conference champions would be seeded 1, 2, 3, 4 and get those first-round byes. But that was done before a lot of the conference realignment, including Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, and then all of the schools that went to the Big 12 and the collapse of the Pac-10, the Pac-12, I should say. So it really didn't work in year one because you ended up with Boise State as the 3 seed and Arizona State as the 4 seed, and they were significant underdogs in their first round games. So now they've changed it. It's a straight seeding 1 through 4. And I do think, it's obviously going to be based on the opinion of the committee rather than a tangible thing like a conference championship. But I do think that's the kind of playoff that people want because that's normal in sports, not just college football, that the best teams get the best seeding.
Which coaches start the season pretty close to the hot seat if they're not already on it?
Well, I think you really have to start looking at the SEC first. I think there's a lot of names in that league that are in pretty uncomfortable positions right now, starting with Hugh Freeze at Auburn. Brian Kelly, it was a disaster last year at LSU. Oklahoma, Brent Venables, very much on the hot seat. It's not gone very well. Billy Napier at Florida looked like he was done midway through last year, but did finish well and kept his job. They're going to have to show some improvement. Sam Pittman at Arkansas, for sure. I think he could be in his last year. And a little bit Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. I don't think he's going to lose his job if Alabama misses the playoff again. But you don't get that long of a runway at Alabama, and certainly year one did not go quite as well as they thought. In other leagues, I think Brent Pry at Virginia Tech, Joey McGuire at Texas Tech, a school that spent a ton of money in recruiting in the transfer portal. They need to show some results. And then Mike Norvell at Florida State last year was a mess. They need to rebound. And Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State has been there forever, has had a lot of success. Last year didn't go well, restructured his contract. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I think he's very much on the hot seat right now.
Which coach do you actually want to see succeed this season?
I think for me, it's Lincoln Riley. The sport of college football as a whole is better when USC is good. And I don't know what the future looks like for USC, given his huge contract and his huge buyout, if Lincoln Riley doesn't have a big year. He's the 4th highest paid coach, and after making such a big splash in the portal, adding 5 former 4-star transfers, I think he's got all the tools to make it big. College football is simply more fun when you have big brands like USC filling the Coliseum, when you've got them playing their marquee games against Notre Dame. I would like to see USC return to prominence after Caleb Williams and to show that the Lincoln Riley era still has some gas to it.
I've got Jake Dickert at Wake Forest, a coach and program that's really been through the ringer the last few years. Obviously, Dickert took over at Washington State, under strange circumstances, had to coach through strange circumstances when they were left out of the latest round of realignment, led them to a successful year last year, and now took kind of his lifeline to an ACC program that really struggled the last couple of years under Dave Clawson. I think this would be a nice feel-good story. I'd love to see both this coach and team have a nice year.
I'm going with Mario Cristobal at Miami. He is such a good coach and an excellent recruiter, but he makes some really questionable decisions sometimes, especially when it comes to clock management. And that ultimately costs his team really badly sometimes. Last season, I really thought he had something cooking with Cam Ward, but too many close games there eventually caught up with Miami, and it really fell off at the end of the season. Cristobal taking Miami to the playoff would be fun. It would be a new face in the playoff scene, but I don't know if a maybe healthy Carson Beck quarterback is the right guy to do it. Which power conference is going to be the most chaotic this year?
Yeah, to me, the answer is easily the Big 12. It's pretty much the Big 12 every year, but this is the only league, really, where you can go from worst to first, as Arizona State did last year, or vice versa, as Oklahoma State, who was picked to finish really highly, ended up going 0-9 in Big 12 play last year. A lot of contenders, but no clear favorite here. I think you could argue Baylor, you could argue Kansas State, or a team like Texas Tech, or obviously Arizona State again. So I think a lot of intrigue in this league.
If not the most chaotic league, the Big 12 is going to be the most fascinating league. Colorado is a question mark in the post-Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders era. BYU without Jake Retzlaff becomes a huge question mark. Is Jalen Daniels healthy for Kansas? Can he stay healthy? Is Arizona State a flash in the pan, or is this their new reality? Rich Rodriguez is back at West Virginia. I feel like no one's really talking about that as much as we should be. Is Mike Gundy in danger at Oklahoma State after all these years? And we get Farmageddon in week 0 in Ireland. So we're starting off really, really hot here.
I look at the odds for who's favored to win this conference, and Kansas State, Arizona State, Baylor, Texas Tech, and Utah are all in a 5-way tie for the best odds to win the conference. If that doesn't scream chaos, especially given the context of what we know about this conference and how easily things can change, this is fun. It could also mean that they cannibalize each other and ultimately only get one team in the playoff again, which would be disappointing for that conference. But as far as chaos potential, it's got to be the Big 12. Who are your Power 4 conference champions plus the highest ranked Group of 5 conference champion?
Texas is the team that's going to win the SEC, in my opinion. I think Penn State breaks through to win the Big 10. I think Kansas State, they're going to win the Big 12. And then in the ACC, you've got Clemson, who made the playoff last year, is a bit of a surprise. I'm going to go with Memphis. Memphis out of the American Conference.
Yeah, I'll start off in the ACC. I think that's the most cut and dry one. To me, it's pretty obviously Clemson. In the SEC, I've got Texas. Heading over to the Big 10, I've got Penn State. Going to the Big 12, I actually do have Baylor. Baylor caught fire at the end of last season, was playing really well. And out of the G5, it's kind of boring, but I've got Boise again.
ACC, I've got Clemson. SEC, I think Texas runs away with it. I think in the Big 12, I'm going to go Kansas State. I also have Penn State in the Big 10. For Power 4, I'm looking at UNLV.
In the ACC, I'm going with Clemson there. Big 12, Arizona State repeats. I really think they've got something going on there, especially with Sam Leavitt returning. Ohio State is back on top in the Big 10. SEC, I'm going to regret this. It sounds stupid even saying it. I'm picking LSU. I don't know why. I don't have faith in Brian Kelly. It's really just about Garrett Nussmeier. And when it comes to the Group of 5, I'm going with UNLV too. Which 2 teams will play for the national championship and who will win it all?
Texas and Penn State are going to meet for the national title, and I think Texas, Steve Sarkisian, with Arch Manning as his quarterback this year, finally starting, I think they will end up winning the national title.
Yeah, to me, I've got Texas and Penn State playing for the national title. I think these are probably the 2 teams most proven, and I've got Penn State winning it all.
I'm not brave enough to say Penn State's going to win the title. I've got Texas and Clemson, with Texas winning and Arch Manning fulfilling his destiny.
I also have Texas over Clemson, and I really want to be wrong here, but when it comes to Clemson, the Tigers have an underwhelming schedule, and if the playoff bracket falls the right way, they could have a relatively manageable path to the title game.